Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Tague, and I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague, Emily Dentinger today. I'm speaking from our Boston office, and Emily is joining from Philadelphia. We are both data analytics consultants at Thorogood, and we have deep experience in the Microsoft Azure stack, and we'll be pulling on that knowledge today for our discussion. Here's a view of what we'll be covering today. We'll start with saying a bit more about Thorogood and who we are and what we do. We'll then jump into what Azure Synapse Analytics is, followed by a closer look at some of its key features and capabilities. Next, we'll dive into some implementation and design patterns to keep in mind when considering Azure Synapse. And we'll end the session talking about where we best see Azure Synapse Analytics being adopted and thoughts on using it effectively. First, an overview of Thorogood. We're an independent professional services firm specializing in data and analytics strategies, solutions, and services with a focus on our customers. We're a global company with offices in London, Philadelphia, Boston, Singapore, Sao Paulo, and Bangalore. All our consultants are recruited and trained in a deliberate way to develop a unique mix of skills, blending business understanding in the form of industry experience with strong technical aptitude and a deep understanding of analytical tools and techniques. We offer a full range of data and analytics services, including strategy and roadmaps, design, implementation, data analysis, and training and support. In terms of the technologies we work with, we are an independent consulting firm, meaning we don't work with one specific technology. We do, however, work and partner with many of the key players in the market in order to provide our clients with a solution that best suits their needs. Having said this, we are discussing a Microsoft product today, and we have a long-standing partnership with Microsoft. We've maintained a number of gold competencies, ran training programs, and had the opportunity to work closely with Microsoft teams. Next, we'll dive into Azure Synapse Analytics with an overview of what it is and how it works. Azure Synapse Analytics is much more than just an evolution of SQL Data Warehouse. It provides a unified experience that brings together data warehousing, data ingestion, and big data analytics at cloud scale. Instead of patching a bunch of services together, Synapse unifies your data tasks, and your data teams. Starting with data and its storage. Synapse brings multiple storage options together, specifically relational storage with data lake storage. Given the current data landscape, we're seeing there's an ever-increasing need for the flexibility to not only have data available in the traditional data warehouse setting, but also to have access to more modern data storage mediums, like a data lake, that hold a combination of structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. Next, data integration. With the storage and transformation of data, there's an inherent need to ingest this data regardless of the structure. Those familiar with Azure Data Factory will find the data ingestion principles of Synapse are closely aligned. Next, big data analytics. Once the data is cleansed and stored within the Azure Synapse resources, it is important to understand what the data is actually telling us. Within Synapse, there is the ability to visualize and perform rapid analytics and exploratory data analysis directly on your Synapse storage resources. By coupling these data concepts and encapsulating them in one product, Synapse offers a cohesive, collaborative environment for the users. With limitless scale on Azure Synapse, you're guaranteed industry-leading performance on your demanding workloads, such as enterprise data warehousing, and also use the new serverless on-demand query capability to query your data. And you can deliver powerful insights across your business as Azure Synapse is deeply integrated with Power BI and Azure Machine Learning. This will significantly reduce project development time and enable data professionals to apply intelligence over all their most important data. This is all accomplished within a unified experience where data prep, data management, data warehousing, big data, and AI tasks can be done in a single unified workspace. And of course, security is always paramount. Azure Synapse provides fine-grained access control to ensure data stays safe and private. Synapse Analytics is comprised of this main toolset, which includes Synapse Workspace, which is the interface over a whole bunch of tools. Within Workspace, we have Azure ML, Power BI interfaces, etc. We then have SQL Pool, which is a multi-parallel processing SQL database, essentially a rebadging of SQL Data Warehouse. Here we can write transact SQL against the data lake. Next, Synapse Notebooks. Microsoft's own version of the Notebooks Spark type environment where we can transform and analyze data. And lastly, pipelines, using the same data integration engine and experiences as Azure Data Factory. I'll now hand over to Emily to dive into some key features and capabilities.
Great. So at this point, I'll switch us over to key features and capabilities. So really, what can Synapse Analytics do? What was it really designed to do? high level, there are really four main capabilities or components, those being data engineering, data warehousing, data lake, and converged analytics. We'll take a quick look at some of the key features within each of those silos. Starting with data engineering. So what are we doing with data engineering here? Well, first of all, we're streamlining pipeline development. So we can easily construct ETL and ETL processes in a no-code or code-optional environment. We are orchestrating data integration, so facilitating seamless collaboration through integrated Spark and SQL engines. And we're simplifying security and management, so automating the protection of private and sensitive data with column and row level security and data masking if necessary. A few features I want to call out, the first being the optimized Apache Spark. So with Synapse, we can process big data with serverless Spark pools. Another call out here, auto scale and auto pause capabilities. So we can launch clusters on demand, scale in and out, and ultimately save money. We're using only what we need and paying for only what we use. So this simplified ETL point that I have here, everything is managed from the same platform. So data pipelines, data warehouse, all of your monitoring and tracking, we're really simplifying all of that into one platform. And last point I want to touch on, built-in connectors. As with other Azure and Microsoft products, there are innate built-in connectors that allow you to easily and quickly connect to and ingest data. I believe Synapse is at 95 built-in connectors and counting. The next point here, data warehousing, or the next silo, I should say. Azure SQL Data Warehouse is essentially now Azure Synapse Analytics. It's a cloud-based data warehouse that leverages massively parallel processing to quickly run complex queries across enterprise data. As you integrate and analyze, the data warehouse will become the single source of truth. So just a few points here. Synapse SQL, so the industry-leading SQL engine, is really the foundation upon which you will build your workloads. Just one other call out here, in-engine analytics. So with Synapse, you can generate millions of predictions directly in your data warehouse. So there's really no need to move or copy data for those analytics. The next silo here, data lake. So regarding data lake capabilities and components. First point here, with Synapse, there's the built-in innate ability to explore your data lake. So you can essentially immediately explore the data lake with the built-in serverless query endpoint. You can analyze your data, so just quickly analyzing data in various formats, whether that be Parquet, CSV, JSON, and so on. We can really maximize existing skills. So your data teams can explore the data lake while using T-SQL. That learning curve is really not too great. And then we kind of mentioned this earlier, but pay per query. So you're only paying for executed queries. Last point here, converged analytics. So the story here, Microsoft is really injecting and infusing analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning into essentially every component of Synapse. So data engineering, warehousing, the data lake. This is a mix of proprietary out-of-the-box algorithms alongside the ability to develop more bespoke analytic solutions. So just a few call-outs here. Operational analytics. We can perform analytics on operational data without copying or moving any data. Streaming analytics. With Synapse, we can create streaming jobs with Event Hubs Premium, which is actually a linked service in Azure Synapse. And then last point here I'll touch on, AI-infused pipelines. So we can apply artificial intelligence directly to our data pipelines. And by doing so, we're really just automating insights there. At this point, I want to walk through a few different architecture patterns that utilize different Synapse components for different purposes. So we'll kind of walk through what that looks like. And we'll start here with a generic skeleton framework, or kind of the normal flow that we're seeing with integrated analytics platforms. So over there on our left, we have our data. So internal, external, cloud, on-prem, third-party, whatever it may be. We'll somehow ingest that data into our cloud environment, and from there, we'll process and transform it get it into a modeled state and really sitting in some sort of semantic warehousing layer. As we're processing, cleaning, and modeling our data, we'll kind of continuously write that back to our data lake. And we'll see different layers of data lakes. Different organizations refer to those layers as different things. We've seen raw, landing, transformed. Microsoft uses bronze, silver, gold, just kind of different stages of data processing in your data lake. And on top of that modeled and modeling warehouse and that semantic layer, and actually our data lake in this case, we can build out reports, visualizations, dashboards, and really package up any data and analytics that we've produced. So with Azure Synapse Analytics, we're really wrapping most of that ETL and analytics process into a cohesive package, and that package being Synapse. So we'll flip over to a specific component breakdown in just a minute, but I do want to touch on some considerations when designing and implementing enterprise scale solutions. The first point I have here being the organization of code and pipelines. So Synapse is bringing tools together like ADF and Azure ML, and it really offers the chance to recycle and reuse them from potentially separate interfaces into one unified interface. With proper management and DevOps practices, we're really seeing the opportunity to cut down on redundant processes, leading to cost and time savings ultimately. Next consideration would be DevOps. So Synapse has all of the tools for an end-to-end solution, and this is great, but it does create some issues, and really just to prevent those issues, it's important to instill a strong DevOps framework. Exploratory data analysis. So we have the ability to query directly into the data lake or data warehouse. This gives data scientists and analysts the ability to quickly run ad hoc analysis or queries for rapid experimentation. So a consideration would be, how can we utilize these ad hoc queries and how can we capitalize on this ability to rapidly experiment? Next point here, access and roles. So another consideration, it becomes increasingly important with this much data and this much integration to ensure that your data is democratized appropriately so that your users within your organization understand the acceptable applications of Synapse's integrated product offering. So access and roles being a pretty important point there. Reporting solutions. So something that we think is quite significant from a reporting perspective is Synapse's ability to visualize results nearly immediately from your queries. So in the past, getting data from an ad hoc querying tool to a reporting application was pretty cumbersome. But now that data with varying degrees of structure can be queried and visualized nearly immediately in Synapse, this lends itself to being a great tool for those one-off ad hoc inquiries. Last point here being around data governance. So with data analytics capabilities and reporting all together, we need to maintain tight authority over standards, rules, best practices, ways of working, data restrictions, and so on. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so the first business use case that we've mocked up is intended for big data analytics at enterprise scale, So just a sample architecture here. We can ingest the data using Azure Synapse pipelines. This is the same integration engine, the same UI essentially, and the same experience as Data Factory. It's just kind of reskinned as Synapse. So we'll pull our data in using Synapse pipelines. For our transformation and analytics stage here, we can use Apache Spark in Azure Synapse Analytics, which cleanses, normalizes, and performs other processing tasks on data ingested from our source locations. I've also thrown in Azure Data Explorer into this transformation and analytics phase. Data Explorer is a fast, fully managed, and highly scalable data analytics service for real-time analysis on large volumes of of data. So between those two, we can process and transform our data. And then once we have that transformed data, we can build a modern data warehouse on the foundation of the SQL engine. From our Synapse workspace, we can use the built-in Power BI linked service to build a Power BI report right on top of our Synapse dataset. So that's kind of potentially what that would look like. Of course, simplified down a bit, but high level, that's kind of what we would be looking at. A second use case we have here being advanced analytics. So this architecture might look slightly different. So starting off, we can ingest data again with Synapse pipelines. We can actually also throw in some Databricks notebooks to ingest raw streaming data. So for example, if we have data coming in from Azure Event Hubs, we can pull that in using Databricks notebooks. Once ingested, we can process using Azure Spark and Data Explorer. From there, we can call on Azure Cognitive Services or Azure ML to apply any AI or ML algorithms or analytics. A big selling point of Synapse is that we can bundle our model scoring and our data processing. So they'll use that same underlying engine. Yeah, so we can really kind of bundle those two. Once we write our results back to our processed layer, we can again visualize that. I've included Power BI again here as kind of our reporting layer, but there's certainly other options. We're not limited to Power BI here. We want to throw in a few quick thoughts and perspectives on Synapse. So the product launched roughly a year ago. So we've had some time to observe how it's working, how clients are using it, and so on. First point I have here, differentiation. We are still looking to see the key differentiation points between Synapse Analytics and existing Azure tools. Synapse has refaced Data Factory and offered a notebook alternative in addition to big data navigation. And now we're starting to see integrations with Azure ML, Power BI, Purview, and so on. But really overall, the exact selling point of Synapse, they're kind of still in the works, and the long-term vision is evolving really just due to an influx of new features. It's pretty evident in the investment being made by Microsoft across all fronts to make Synapse a success. It's their enterprise big data tool, and we need to be very mindful of the abilities it gives us and how to get an edge by adopting it. Something we're very focused on is the glide plan for Synapse and where value is being derived for our customers. Naturally, large enterprise organizations can be slow to change, considering operational effort, security considerations, and so on. We're actually seeing organizations with existing mature Azure ecosystems a bit slower in their evaluation and not necessarily jumping onto Synapse without due diligence and really a business case to do so. There's an opportunity here, and we're seeing a clear path to start with Synapse. Microsoft historically has capitalized on its integrations between tools, similarities in user interfaces, and combined vision. And we're seeing that as a clear value add and differentiator for Synapse. There are connectors to Power BI, Azure ML, relational and data lake storage, Purview cataloging, and so on. This could really end up being a game changer in consolidating investments, operations, and development activities. And last point, or last thought, I should say, naturally, a new tool being introduced and positioned as a central tenet of a big data architecture, there's a need for assessing governance standards and self-serve strategy. We're pushing the envelope of lakehouses of self-service reporting and business analysis, and really business-led data science with the closeness to data, to integrations, and to the adoption of base languages in a reasonable interface. With the fast evolution of technology, we have to make sure that strategy keeps up. Yeah, that strategy really keeps pace with this. All right, to wrap up, we'll share some inspiration for next steps and really how to get started with Azure Synapse. First point here, naturally an assessment of what Synapse can do and what features could be significant for your organization. We see organizations outlining requirements or goals, and then we can kind of list out how Synapse stacks up against those requirements and goals. Whether identifying key representation or focusing on architecture teams, we're seeing trainings in Synapse run by Microsoft as well as partners like ourselves. This hands-on analysis and exploration, and if already having investments in Azure, this can give pretty quick insight and short time to value to assessing the tool and determining if you have the right skills and the right opportunity to use it. If going forward with Synapse, we're seeing customers spend time analyzing and defining architecture patterns to see what Synapse replaces or what Synapse complements and so on. There are obviously aspects to consider and to get right before implementation, such as security, administration, connectivity, and so on. So a considered architecture design is the main starting point here. Something we're doing with a few customers is a bit beyond a POC and an architecture design. It's more of a strategic evaluation and implementation plan for Synapse. So we're looking at the business use case to align to an implementation, putting together initial trainings and onboardings, building sample frameworks, and so on. So it's a little more in-depth than a standard training. Last point here, certainly there's an opportunity to deployment for customers with cloud presence. We're seeing investment in the design and implementation of Synapse alongside existing infrastructure. Lots of organizations will have a data lake and want to apply Synapse on top of it, as well as integrating with existing relational warehouses, Power BI patterns, and so on. So how can Thorogood help? As Tim mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have a long history of working with some of the largest organizations in the world. As such, we have experience and we've really built up expertise in a few of the following areas, certainly not limited to these 5, but just to name a few: organizational and governance strategy, exploratory data analytics and experimentation, industrialization of solutions, architecture strategy, MLOps, and DevOps. All right, at this point, we can conclude our webcast. I want to thank everyone for joining. We appreciate the interest, and thank you.